you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join doctors Joanne and Erin as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
In this episode, I'm talking with Joanne about the subtle kind of emptiness that many women in medicine carry, but rarely say out loud. She shares how reconnecting with yourself can be a critical piece that's often missing from the foundation, even when everything looks good from the outside. Before we get started, we'd love your help in getting Create Meaning in Medicine in front of more eyes and ears. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, if you pause, go to the show and scroll down to the stars. You can leave us a star rating, and we would love to have a written review. If you're watching us on YouTube, take a pause and leave us a comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. These small actions can help the conversation reach more women in medicine who can benefit. And with that, Joanne, I would love to hear what you actually mean with reconnection.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you for the invitation, for all the rating and reviews that we need. I always like to start with a question, because we need to challenge the kind of pre-recorded definitions that we have about these words in our brain. So I'll start with that. So what do you think of when you hear the word reconnection or connection in general? And for most of us, we think of someone else, like connection with our spouse or our kids, our friends, even our mission. And we often forget that the most important thing is connecting with yourself. And I say reconnection because a lot of us, unfortunately, have learned through the years, or because we're so busy, we kind of start disconnecting. So this is a kind of a rediscovery into ourselves. And I wanted to talk about this because this is often, like you were saying in the introduction, the foundation that we need to get back to before we start to set goals or any other desired outcomes. We frequently have all the tools, all the skills, and then we don't always follow through because there's a disconnection. And this is of the process of really kind of restoring that relationship that we have with our body, with our emotions, that inner voice that like we forget. We start listening to the noise instead of connecting with that truth. And your identity. We talk so much about the importance of our identity and how we take action based on how we define ourselves. And often we just go into autopilot, which serves us if we're busy at work, if we're doing a lot of things, but then we don't always disconnect from that to reconnect with ourselves. And that's sometimes what keeps us in that exhaustion. We kind of get that emotional numbness or even resentment or worrying more. And then we end up losing joy or feeling stuck. And I always say, I hope that you're hearing this message to bring awareness with a lot of compassion and not judgment. So if your brain is already kind of getting noisy with judgment, remember, this is for us to really pause, slow down, because we have been trained to do this. And actually, we might have been celebrated by how long we can go without eating or going to the bathroom. How many hours in a row can we work? And that it's then what gets wired in our brain. And we do learn to ignore our needs in our bodies and kind of push the emotions to the side and even kind of push through pain, and we start defining as ourselves through that. So it's this work. It's also another way to think about it is what defines your identity, and are we defining ourselves just through what we do? And then of course we're going to get that identity exhaustion versus really connecting back to what's important to you and give yourself permission to really listen. This is beautiful work that I think we all need to every now and then.
I love how deep you're diving into this topic about reconnection and the layers of what it means, and even tying it into our identity. And why do you think this hits women in medicine especially hard?
And yes, thank you for that question. And like I was saying, it's um right, like, one, think of what are the things that get rewarded. Like, think of women in medicine who we look up to, and a lot of them, it's someone who's super busy, over functioning, they see all the patients, but then there's a lot of self-sacrificing and the how do you say, the right, like the I cannot remember how you say it, but it's like the over functioning, right? Like so that we don't use the word necessarily of the multitasking. And then, of course, the perfectionism and the emotional suppression. But then we pay the price. Our nervous system pays the price. And we get so good at working through stress, we don't even recognize it. And that makes me sad every time that I talk to one of our coaching clients, and there's that sense of like fight or flight all the time, and it's very difficult. Like, it just becomes our normal, and it shouldn't be. And we need to know that it shouldn't be that way. But when that's the example that's around you all the time, like the successful doctor is the one who's super busy, who sees all the patients, who makes all the money, versus us seeing the example of what do we want success to mean. And maybe we should look up to the person who decided to mid-career go part-time so that they could travel more, spend more time with their families, or do a little bit more of that self-care. And hopefully we're changing that culture. That's part of obviously why Erin and I are doing this podcast. And right, like, I keep on saying the same thing, but really getting back to ourselves and defining that for you so that you can find that harmony and that balance and whatever that means to you. There's been times in my life that I found a lot of joy and sense of fulfillment through working more and teaching the students and getting involved in projects and having leadership positions. And that's very different now. Like, I'm going to be an empty nester in a couple of months. I want to spend as much time as I can with my kid. I take care of my mom, who's elderly, and I am very intentional about my time with her, even though it's very difficult. And in my transition out of being in like corporate medicine into private practice, even though I am a little bit slower than I want to be, I am really enjoying the time, even though again it's stressful. So I'm not saying that then it's like that, peace and love all the time, but it's really defining what where you want to be right now that serves that future self, like you often say, Erin.
And this topic hits really deeply for me too, because the opposite of connection is disconnection. And I might have shared before, I interviewed my oldest son just to get his perspective. What was it like growing up in our household? And it's not been made public. But one of the themes that kept coming through his language was disconnection from me as a mom and also my husband because of how busy our jobs were. And like Joanne, I'm not quite an empty nester yet either. But as I then got raised awareness that I was disconnected and learned different ways to set healthier boundaries, when life has slowed down and it's not the bullet train speed that it was before, that opens up our capacity to reconnect with ourselves as well as our loved ones. And I place different different value on that now than I used to. Before I was like, oh gosh, I got to get the kids to bed, I got to get them to school, I have to do all these things, I have to help take care of my elderly parents when that was the case. And now I want this time for connection, I want to be available. And in order to make, we have to create capacity for that. And so, Joanne, as we always like to share, what I'd like to hear kind of your take on why does reconnection matter so much for this foundation you're talking about? And then I think we're going to get to what can we do about it.
Yes. And it's all tied together. And I love this personal development statement that we hear all the time, that what got you here will not take you there. And what does it mean? The habits, rituals, identity, beliefs, whatever you want to call it, thoughts, emotions, practices that allowed you to get to where you are now might not be what you need to become that person you want to be. And I know I'm making it like a big statement, but it could be just setting a goal. Because if you had all the tools, including that identity piece, you would be there already. That's right. Like that's kind of the other side of the coin. So it's kind of creating that it's right. Like if we want to create a new chapter, we need to really think of what are the identity shifts that we need. And we have to really connect with the core of who we are for that. So that's why I really wanted for us to talk about these topics. And because we're really good at being busy, we're good at checking off boxes, following a list. Again, we can do it, but it might feel forced, or it might not be sustainable. So that's why we start very hopeful, and then it's difficult to follow through because it's not always in alignment with that identity and the connection and what you're giving yourself permission to believe you can be, right? And that's kind of in thinking about kind of manifesting other bigger things that you want. And when and this is why it's really important, when you reconnect, everything will feel easier. No, and I'm not saying like whatever you want to do, it's easy, but the path will get clear. You're going to have a sense of energy. Your motivation will come back. It's going to be, there's not going to be any confusion or feeling stuck. I know a lot of us use that language. It's easier to set boundaries. It's easier to protect the time. And then your joy increases, that sense of fulfillment increases. And then that by itself kind of refuels the motivation. And then you get into this really good motivation and sense of trust to yourself that you are going to kind of have your own back.
I love that. And one of the things I'm picturing is, I know when I ask my coaching clients, and I would assume you see this too, we ask some pretty deep questions during these sessions, almost like sometimes philosophical questions. And often there's this long, long pause, especially for women who are new to coaching, because they are so disconnected from themselves. They are so outward focused on everyone else. They have no idea who they are. They've disconnected, as Joanne said, because they've needed to for so many reasons. And this is that wake up call. I love, Joanne, how you continue to pull us back into the basics, back into our foundation, because if we want to get really clear on where we're going, we're at the start of the new year in 2026 as we're recording this. How are we going to do that if we're not connected with ourselves? And so, Joanne, I would love to hear your input on how can we get reconnected with ourselves.
And I love that you mentioned questions, because that's actually the first step. If you want a better quality of life, ask better questions. Instead of asking, what should I do? Which I think all of us have that tattooed in our bodies because we say it so much. Instead, ask, what do I want? What do I really want? And like you're mentioning the work in coaching, so often I ask that question, and it is silence on the other side as well. It's sad when the answer that I get often is, I don't know. I really don't know what I really want. It's been so long since I've asked myself that question. So we need to get back to that with permission, and then saying, what do I feel? That's a great question. If we do that on a regular basis, that's kind of how we retrain getting connected with our emotions again. It doesn't matter the answer, just asking the question has been shown to improve mood and sense of well-being. So that's a really good one. And then what do I need? And so often we say nothing, I'm fine. And then we have to ask it again. What do I really need? What, right? Like what would be nice? And one of my favorite questions, if I had a genie in a bottle, but you don't have to go that far. Just get used to asking this very gentle, loving questions to yourself, and listen to that inner voice, almost like you were listening to your best friend that you haven't talked to in a long time and they're telling you something very important. So that's the first one. Good questions like that. And then as you go through this, these are not easy questions. Notice where you are abandoning yourself. And that might be an odd concept, so I'll explain it. So, where are you not setting a boundary that you have to set? That's sometimes you abandoning yourself, right? Or you're saying yes when you mean to say no. You're not taking care of your body. And it's not like I'm not eating enough vegetables or going to the gym, but then saying, you're not even drinking enough water, or you're not going to the bathroom. You're not eating as good, or something hurts and we just minimize it. Where are places that you are kind of suppressing your truth, like you're gaining awareness, but you're still pushing it to the side? So these are all, again, not easy things that to start reconnecting with ourselves. And like we always say over and over, awareness is that first act of reconnection. And then you can meet that future self. So then you can ask other questions. Like, if I were my most confident, best self, what would I be doing right now? Or connect with that future self of in a year and ask her, how are you doing all of that? Assuming that she's doing some of the things that you want to be doing like at this time. And really honor all the details, one small thing at a time. So I hope that serves as a good framework. I know it sounds simple, but it takes time. This is the deep work that we do in coaching as well. It's like really getting that awareness, asking the better questions, reconnecting with ourselves, and then really envisioning that future self that's already in us. Really, we just need to let her out more often.
That's so powerful. And as you say those words, and as you talk about how it might seem so simple and the foundation, and yet it leads to us showing up more connected with ourselves, and I think displaying a better version of ourselves to the outside world. And I picture some of the clients that I've been working with, especially for multiple years, about how now some of those things that seemed so difficult because they were disconnected, how they show up so much more beautifully as a parent, as a leader or supervisor or business owner at work. And it's a journey. They didn't get there overnight. And yet with the ongoing support and the right questions, either asked by themselves or by us as their coaches, it is so powerful to see that transformation that is so possible with the right permission, as Joanne says, with the right awareness, and with the right tools and strategies, like Joanne was sharing. What can we do? Ask better questions, quit abandoning ourselves, and really raise that awareness. And when you get so well connected with yourself, the benefits are just so profound for you and those that you're around. Joanne, thank you for so beautifully sharing this discussion on reconnecting with ourselves. And with that also helps us reconnect with the people in our lives. Loved this discussion. And if you think this conversation would be helpful for someone you know, please don't hesitate to share this episode. And if you haven't yet, then give us a rating and review, because that also helps us get in front of a bigger audience. And with that, stay tuned, because our next episode is coming right up.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.